another watch list, my weekly or so rundown of what I've been watching and what I've been up to. This week is a bit stream heavy. I've only got a couple of physical releases, but let's just jump in to what we've been doing. And the first up is a streaming movie, and it is Disney's Soul, a Pixar movie that was released in Disney Plus recently to, I would say, fairly widespread acclaim. And it tells the story of a man who wants to be a musician, but he's stuck teaching. He's not fulfilling his dream. But he gets the chance to fulfill his dream, and just as that happens, he thinks he's made it, etc. He's dead, killed. And rather than go up to heaven, he managed to find a way to get into what he thinks is like a purgatory kind of place, but it's actually the waiting area for new souls coming into the world before they inhabit the human bodies. But he has to try and help those people find their soul, or their meaning, or the reason for being. And that therefore sets up the whole scene of the movie. And not just a musician, but he wants to be a jazz musician. So there's a very jazz heavy soundtrack the whole way through it. And the soundtrack is fantastic from start to finish. I should really pick up a physical release of that soundtrack. And Soul itself is just a beautiful film. It is, in the classic sense of many Pixar movies, it really has heart, or it has soul in it. And its ability to tell stories and show on screen physical manifestations of what it wants that you wouldn't be able to do with film has always been at the core of what makes Pixar great, and this is no exception. I adored Soul. It got a big thumbs up from everybody in the family. We have an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a small child in a man's body right here, as well as my wife, and we all loved Soul dearly, and it was rather fantastic. Next up, I'm going to go for a physical release. Now, I've talked about one half of this physical release, which was La Jetée before. This is Chris Marker's double pack Criterion release of La Jetée and Soleil. And La Jetée is basically a still half an hour still film that basically tells the story of a time traveler. It's always been broadly said was the inspiration for 12 Monkeys, for instance, but Soleil is a very different beast than that. And Soleil basically it's pretty much a documentary that chronicles, a travel logger's view of the world, or his observances of going traveling from country to country. But it concentrates on just a few areas, mainly Japan, Guinea-Bissau, and Iceland. That's through there. But I would say a large chunk of it is Japan, and it's a very lauded film, much more so than I would have thought, because it is not, I don't think it's the type of film that will absolutely bang you and hit you up the face upon first watch. And in the first watch for Soleil, for me, I liked it. It has a lot of things, and a lot of things that he observes that you'll pore on for a while. It's the idea that if something isn't captured on film, or somebody's not capturing something on film or in pictures, how does the persistence of memory run in the head? Does the memory live as strong? Is it as powerful, etc.? There are lots of things like that in Soleil. And it is very much a thought-provoking documentary and filmmaking. Some of it looks at, how people react in like a documentary-style filmmaking of just people that weren't scripted characters or anything, how they react to how a camera is and around them. And then it also looks at the role of certain things within their culture and their society, and how that all plays out. It's the kind of film I felt almost impossible to kind of rate, because while I enjoyed it, and it didn't lose me at any point, in like the same way like La Jetée was a much more difficult watch for me, even though it was only half an hour long, because it was all still images, and for me just didn't pull me along in the same way where Soleil, an hour and a half long, kind of did a much better job of that. It's very thought-provoking. It is the kind of thing that I'd want to watch again, because there's a lot to digest in, and I don't feel like I've even got half of what the filmmaker was intending me to think about, because it is quite dense. But it is an interesting look at other cultures and other ways of life, other than my own, other than the Western society that we have. And so, between that and then going through the filmography, etc., that's in the booklet, it's an interesting watch, and it probably is one of those things that everybody should watch at some time, but it might be one of those things you need to be in the mood for and wanting to explain or see what happens in other walks of life in an interesting fashion as this does. So that is Soleil, and I know a lot of people will really love that. Next one, I'll go back. Why not go for, it's a new year, why not keep on watching Pedro Almodovar's movies? And I've kept on doing that on Mubi. One that I've seen recently was called I'm So Excited. And unusual sense of Almodovar movies, it's bananas. It's pretty much bananas. It's about a plane up in the sky, and it's struggling. The landing gears get stuck, and they're probably going to have to crash land somewhere, and they don't want to tell the passengers. So you have the 3 air stewardesses that are in the first class cabin of the business class, if you want to put it that way, that are looking after all the people that have plenty of money. We don't really see the back of the cabin very much, except for a couple of rather awkward kind of scenes. I'll let you experience those yourself. And then we have the pilot and co-pilot in the front. And I, as usual, I kind of don't know how to describe the Almodovar movies. You kind of take along for the ride. You know that there's going to be some sort of heavily sexualized storytelling within it. There's going to be some themes within that. You're going to have some characters and actors and actresses that you recognise from other films that they're in. They're kind of all here. It's like a who's who. And you know you're going to have some real weird and wacky scenes that you're going to absolutely love. Now, there is a couple of scenes that I've seen in some of the reviews that people find they just can't get over, given how the content is just not right. But it is a film and it's done for dramatic effect. I didn't take it that seriously, insofar as more for humour that's in it, although I can see why people would be offended by it, or otherwise it's not exactly, you know, if you can't get past the humour, etc., it would be distasteful. But as usual, I just thought it was hilarious and brilliant. It actually steps outside of the plane for one section of it. One of the characters inside is a famous actor, and he's trying to stop his girlfriend from killing herself at the time when he calls her. So he phones her to tell her, oh god, the plane's not doing too well, etc. I'll let you watch that. I'll not ruin it too much. I've ruined enough already, but suffice to say, it's another one to add to the list for me of, God, I really enjoyed this film by Pedro Almodovar, and it's unlike anything I'll ever see. Next up is another physical release from last year, this one by the BFI, and anybody who's been watching the channel knows that I've been a big fan of the BFI's output this year, and this one is Pocket Full of Miracles, which is a Frank Capra film from 1961, I believe, starring Glenn Ford, Bette Davis, and a couple of others. But those are the two main two, and it is very much a My Fair Lady tale. You have a gangster, Dave the Dude, who, well, let's just say he is a gangster, but he's a gangster with a bit of a heart. He has somebody that owes him money that he's been kind of extorting, it seems, over the years, and he pays for their funeral and buries them, and after doing that, everybody's questioning why he would do that, because he's a gangster. Why does he care? That guy still owes him a fortune of money, but he says it's kind of the right thing to do. And his daughter comes along and basically says, I need to give you that money that my father owed you, because it's the right thing to do from my point of view. And he ends up going to work for her. She becomes a showgirl for him in his club, and they pay it off. And on the side is Bette Davis's character, who is, it's like the pauper. She's a street beggar, but she sells Dave apples, and the apples that she starts to sell Dave seem to bring him luck. And so when Dave the Dude's trying to step up in the gangster world and try and make bigger deals, he's very insistent that he needs these apples before he can do anything and step forward that way. So he decides to buy the apples, and it turns out that he kind of needs to do a bit of My Fair Lady, if you've ever seen that, or Pygmalion if you want, with one of the characters, Bette Davis, who is here, and go along. And it's a longish movie, there's no doubt. It's probably over long. It's got many kind of feelings of a musical without necessarily being an entirely a musical. It just has that vibe. It's that overly colourful bit in it, and I pretty much enjoyed it. The wife absolutely loved it. I thought it wasn't as good as My Fair Lady, for instance, and I don't know if they got the casting entirely right. And I think once you read the booklet and see some of the extras, etc., that are inside it, you'll see why. Because Frank Capra didn't want this cast. He was kind of forced into it. He needed Glenn Ford's money with which to make it, and Bette Davis was thrust upon him by the studio to make it more marketable. And it was a bomb at the time. And I can kind of see why. It's kind of sets up as a Christmas movie to start off with, but there's nothing really Christmassy in it. And yeah, I mean, it's a solid 3.5 out of 5. I definitely enjoyed it. Would I go back and watch it all 2 hours 20 of it again? I might, because the audio commentary that's in here, and the booklet refers to it as well. This was a kind of interesting film to make. So when I do go back and watch it, I'll almost certainly watch it with the audio commentary and make my way through it, because I think there's meat in the bones there. On the side as well, in this release as well, are a number of short films. And the number of short films, kind of short films that detail many of the themes that are in here. So I mean, there's people coming to and from America, so it's people immigrating to America and coming to visit. They have people about street beggars. They have bits about many things, and some of them, the films are only a minute or two long. Even my youngest daughter loved them. She was like, any more of those that are short? Did she see kind of slices of life from films, short films made in 1896 or otherwise? And really, really interesting, and another great release from BFI. They absolutely knocked it out of the park last year, and that was wonderful. Second last one I'm going to talk about is Manchester by the Sea, which is seen in streaming as well. I'd started to watch Manchester by the Sea a few years ago, and then kind of got in the way to say my wife will love this as well. Let's watch it. And after the point where I watched about 20 minutes or 30 minutes with Casey Affleck in it, and Kyle Chandler, who I love as well, and Michelle Williams is in it. There's plenty of marketable stars for an independent movie. The film got dark. Oh my god, it's a heartbreaker, a film, and I thought it was brilliant. Like, I have to say, I really do think it is a brilliantly acted and brilliantly scripted movie. The young man who plays young Patrick I think is excellent in it, as much as Casey Affleck in many ways, and really makes the movie, their relationship of what happens. But it is a heartbreaker. It is something that will tear your soul out, and jump up and down it a few times. So just be careful about that. But if anybody has seen Manchester by the Sea, it's one of those films you'd like to have a conversation about the themes and how tough it was, etc. To watch. So definitely, if you've seen it, let me know down in the comments. And the last film from me is another BFI release, but it's another BFI release of Yasujiro Uzo's Good Morning. And I've heard about Good Morning a lot over the years. I mean, Uzo films, they're a weird one for me, because they're so highly appreciated all the time. Lots of people love them, and I like them, but they're not exactly the first ones that I would give to somebody else to go, here, watch this and you will love it, as a great example of world cinema, because they're more subtle than that. They're more nuanced than that. And this is another one. Good Morning basically tells the story of these two brothers who wanted TV. I mean, by and large, that's the crux of the story. They want TV, and they withhold talking as a way to get it off their father and mother, who think it's kind of hilarious in its own way, and they have problems with not being able to speak because they extended the school and classroom. They don't just confine it to the home. And all the while that's going on, they've got the interrelationship between these two boys and the rest of their friends. And then you have the relationship between the parents, about the women within that little small group. They kind of live all on top of each other, and there's the kind of own little mysteries in there. Like, for instance, their women's club money has went missing. Her next door bought a new washing machine, so she must have stole it. It's all of this kind of stuff. It is so charming. It is so life reaffirming, and as a contrast to Manchester by the Sea, you can really see where it's powerful. The relationship of these two men, especially the younger actor here, is just comical. They're just non-stop form of comedy through it, and especially through most of the young characters. There's great comedy in the interplay between them. And then in the adults, it's very much a contrast of how they deal with their problems. There's somebody that's out of work within the group and is harassing everybody in the ability to make money. There's lots in here, but Good Morning is such a charming movie, and really should be watched and enjoyed if you like Ozu films at all, because they are very much family dramas. But this one has so many layers and such a charm to it, as I say. And on this release as well, and I think I did check, it's on the Criterion release as well, is the film that preceded this, so a much earlier film in Ozu's filmography, which was I Was Born But. And Good Morning is really a retelling of that story, but there are very distinct differences between them. In I Was Born But, the story is very much about two brothers again. There's not the contrast in age between them, or not. It's not as obvious a contrast in age, but they are basically worried about social class, and it's a much more serious and tone movie. There's not the fart jokes that are in Good Morning, for instance, in the same way. It's very much about their father, who they look up to and respect, but when they find out that he works for one of their other friends' father and there's therefore an underling, they kind of rebel against that and don't see it, and they see themselves getting in trouble. There's a local bully, etc. And like I say, much more serious film in tone, but equally very enjoyable. And I would encourage you to watch it and contrast the two films as well, because it's an exercise in seeing the differences of how you can approach and make a film. One's in black and white, one's in colour. Sure enough, the themes underlying are very much the same in a lot of aspects. I Was Born But concentrates very closely on the two boys and less on the adults, although there is some interplay with the adults, but mostly the children are present to see it. And just great release for, well, I picked this up was a couple of £. There's so much in this. The only downside, I suppose, is that because it's a dual format release of DVD and Blu-ray, I Was Born But was only on the DVD. But by the time you throw it on a decent player and it upscales a little bit, you'll hardly notice the difference. It's a very nice and great release. And the booklet within inside is pretty wonderful as well, detailing you about the differences between the films and what the themes were within it as well, and making up part of what is the Ozu collection on BFI. So that's my watch list for this week. If you've made it this far, thank you. It's another run through of nearly 20 minutes of films that I've watched. Let me know what you've been watching. If you've seen any of these, like I say, let me know in the comments. And other than that, take care of yourselves, be safe, and keep watching loads and loads of great movies so that you can tell me about them and recommend them so that I can in turn watch them as well. Alright, speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.